watching Force 13's live streaming service. Good evening, this is Force 13 Live. Hello, my name's Nathan Foy. Nice to see you all again. And you're looking at the Atlantic in front of you right now. The visible imagery of it, where you can see a few systems. Tropical Storm Julia on the Atlantic coast of the southeastern United States. Ian moving off towards the north over there in the centre of your image. And off to the right, somewhere, not quite on the image, is Tropical Depression 12. I'm here. I'm also joined by elements of the Force 13 team. It's a different setup every single time you see it. Hello.
Hello from David down here on the east coast of Australia. Nathan, I like that word, elements.
Yes.
And somewhere in the studio, about to come to the microphone, is Adam, who hosts our Caribbean weather desk, and he's based down there on the Cayman Islands. So I think Adam is here.
Yep, I am here indeed. And yes, thanks for everyone for joining. And thank you, Nathan, for, technically hosting it while I verbally host the show. And also thanking David for being here. I was hoping for our other member, Lee, to join us as well, but he doesn't seem to be available at the moment. Hopefully, if anything, we might be able to drag him in sometime a little later on. So,
Where's he gone? Oh, he's here.
Yep.
Signal
Try
issues
again,
there,
Adam.
I'm afraid.
Again,
that's better.
Right. So as I was saying, the Atlantic is getting busy, and as we get through the peak part of the Atlantic hurricane season, as you would imagine, things in weather don't usually happen to a precise dates. So. We are a few days past the peak. However, the peak seems to now just be starting, as we do have Julia, Ian, TD12, soon to be Tropical Storm Carl, as well as you've noticed in the Gulf of Mexico, a big blow-up of thunderstorms. That was former Tropical Invest 92L, which was in the Caribbean. Moved up into the Bahamas, passed into the Florida Straits, into the Gulf of Mexico, and kind of not really did so well there. And system was pretty much there, sitting around, not doing much, and then it had picked up back once again. This system is expected to head towards Texas, and whether or not it develops or not, it will produce some decent rainfall and maybe some gusty winds here and there. But that is what is expected.
And on the other side of Mexico, you can just about see Invest 93E. Further west over there somewhere is Hurricane Orleans, still with us somehow. Invest 93W and 94W either side of Guam. Typhoon Malacas, which is continuing to strengthen, still Category 1 though. And Moranti, which is winding down after making landfall in China earlier today as a Category 2 after its immense peak a few days ago.
Yes, indeed. So overall, globally, the activity has been fairly active. As Dathan had explained, active areas: Atlantic, East Pacific, West Pacific, and that pretty much leaves out the Southern Hemisphere, the Central Pacific, and the Indian Ocean. Usually, Southern Hemisphere doesn't kick off till a good few, month or two away from now. And
September storms are extremely rare.
Extremely rare. However, not to say that it can't happen, but at the moment we're not really seeing much of it happening. However, one thing that I have noticed, and it's something that me and David has spoken about, was that the overall synoptic signals that is happening down his way is kind of indicative of maybe the possibility of an early start to the season is possible. A lot of wetness, a lot of storminess is starting to appear, which is usually quite similar to a La Nina type conditions, and we'd also mention that a little bit later as well. Just a little talk about
Yes.
what's going to happen with that.
And
But first, before we do that, oh, sorry, David.
I just picking up on your point about the weather scene over here in Australia. Nathan, we do have breaking news where this severe weather that's impacting various states sees the emergency services undertaking a major search for a vehicle that has been swept away, and I think it's South Australia where a car has, due to the pressure of the flood water, has been sucked into a bridge. So I think it's going to take a tow truck to get that one out. So we will cover that one in coming hours.
Yes. So before we do, let's go through individually the Atlantic systems. As said, this is the area that's really been picking up in activity, and of course, with three of the Atlantic systems currently affecting land or soon to affect land. We'll definitely cover those as well as the other ones out there, and then we'll go on and discuss the other systems that are out there that I think especially Nathan will have more information on. So first system we'll go ahead and take a look at is Julia. Julia is this system that came off of, formed on Florida, moved up into the Georgia and came offshore, and is currently sitting offshore. Let's get a closer image on that. So with Julia, very interesting situation that's unfolding with this system. As you could all remember, if you had watched my update last night, that the initial track for Julia was to head northwards and northwestwards further inland. Which I myself had a little problem believing because, usually systems they turn more northeast, especially with the upcoming pattern with a trough coming in. It would tend to pull it out towards north and east. So the track north and west.
What was their reasoning behind the forecast? Did other models say that? The HWRF didn't.
Yeah. The thing is that the models were absolutely garbage yesterday with the system. The models, some of them, well, actually a good portion of them were taking it north and westwards and dissipating. However, there was a few models that did end up taking it offshore and even curving it around and bring it back into to landfall, and that has now started to look like materialized, and now the forecast track is for it to come back around and smack the coast once again. The interesting thing with the system is that there's not really that much to prevent it from intensifying. It is forecasted to intensify before making landfall once again. I honestly don't see any reason why it couldn't intensify even further than what's being forecasted. Right now, it's sitting over very, very low wind shear or fairly favorable wind shear. On the northern side, there's about marginal 20. But to the south of it, pretty much over the center and to the south of it, it's pretty favorable. So
I would support the NHC forecast, which says it will intensify to 45.
Yeah, I would say maybe give it up to 50, 60 max, and that's just being nice. The system besides shear, the marginally favorable shear. Also looking at sea surface temperatures, we're talking about 30 degrees sea surface temperatures over the area, which will is definitely favorable. What you would want, the threshold for tropical development is 26 degrees, and we are well above 26 degrees. We're at the 30s. So, there's definitely stuff there to allow it to intensify. And, going into its forecasted track, as I said, expect it to come offshore and then head back in. We'll go into a little bit more detail on the forecast track for that system as well a little bit later. So the other system, what was known as the dreaded I named storm. Luckily this year, the dreaded I named storm is not so dreaded and is out there being a nice boy. Tropical storm Ian. Ian is definitely slowly getting there, getting itself reorganized. Before, it had an up-level anticyclone, preventing shear from really harming the system much. But since then, that upper-level anticyclone had weakened and moved off, and an upper-level low is now becoming co-located over the center, which this can enhance development of the system, and it is expected to. And as we see, as the upper level low becomes co-located over the system, we can see that the convective activity is starting to refire over the center, it's starting to become much more organized. So it's something that we'll keep an eye on. Not going to be a threat to the United States or the Caribbean, likely to be a threat towards, I think it's Iceland and possibly coastal regions of northwestern Scotland, but that's a good few days away still to come. And then, of course, we have the new system, which was 95L that I've noted last night, and now became Tropical Depression number 12. And rightfully so, the organization of the system has gotten better. Convective activity has increased over the system. The system is moving generally west-northwest. It is expected to move westwards and then eventually a little west-southwestwards and then back towards the west. System is expected to become a tropical storm. As I said, it'll be named Carl. And then it'll weaken a little bit after getting attacked by a bit of wind shear. And then it'll get out of that band of wind shear and then start to re-intensify again. This system I am definitely keeping a close eye on. I'm very intrigued in what it will do. I expect it to be around 50 west right about this time next week. And that will be the key moment to determine what this system will do. Whether it will intensify stronger or weaken more, and whether it will take a track more towards the Caribbean or a track more towards the east coast of the United States, or take a track out into the Atlantic very similar to Ian. So that is what we're definitely keeping an eye on. We're watching this one very closely. And as you could see, somewhat, it's not too clear in this image. See these specks of islands here? This is the Cabo Verde Islands, or as better known for many, many years as the Cape Verde Islands. And there's also the west coast of Africa. And so it's currently affecting the area, gusty winds, some rainfall. As it is, it's a stellar depression. It's not going to be giving any tropical storm force sustained winds for the Cabo Verde Islands, maybe some tropical storm gusts. But we expect this thing to become a tropical storm and have those sustained winds further away from the Cabo Verde Islands. And just quickly before we run over the actual cones for the system and also the disturbances, former 92L, which had re-emerged, and also another system which is expected to come off of Africa later maybe this weekend or late this weekend going into next week. That system would likely come off a little further north than 95 or 12, T12, and likely head further out into the Atlantic. So before that, we'll just take a look at the models here. This is for Ian, obviously taking it towards, I believe this is Iceland. Here, and then Scotland's over here with the rest of the UK across here, and models are kind of starting to trend a little bit further south towards the UK, so we'll have to wait and see how it plays out. But either way, 3, 4, 5 days out to go before making any land impacts, and likely when it does so, it would have transitioned out into a post-tropical, extratropical cyclone by then. Here is the models for TD12.
Seems to be consensus there.
Yeah, which, as I said, is quite intriguing. Kind of a pretty much the west-northwest movement is just about pretty much over now. Should just start to drag more west and then start dipping more southwest before continuing on west. Maybe tipping off to the west-northwest again. We'll have to wait and see what it does. As I said, I expect the system to be somewhere along here, somewhere between 15 and 20 degrees north and 50 west, somewhere here about this time next week, and we'll watch it for now. Just track the system. We're not really going to pay too much attention to it until it really gets to about here. Then is the crunch time to decide whether the system will go Caribbean, up the East Coast, or out into the Atlantic. So we'll have to wait and see. Models will flip and flop as time goes on. So we'll just have to wait and see on how that plays out.
Do we have any intensity models on that, perhaps?
Intensity models, not at the moment, but I could get that up.
We'll take a look
for
at that
intensity
soon, after you. Oh, unless you've got it.
Well, I could get it up quite easily here. So, in terms of its intensity, most of the models suggest tropical storm, maybe. Some suggesting maybe weakening down to a depression before re-strengthening again. Hopefully I could get that up here. Come on. Alright. So these are the intensity guidance for the time being. So a general trend is that it'd be a tropical storm within the next 12 to 24 hours, more or less, and then intensify a bit, maybe up to 45 knots, more or less, and then drop back down, likely back into a depression, and then to re-intensify later on. Some of the models do continue keeping it as a depression, some even indicating it weakening off even further. But the general consensus and the NHC forecast is for it to become a tropical storm, weaken down to a depression, and re-strengthen back again to a tropical storm once about 96 to 120 hours plus. So in the meantime, we'll just keep an eye on it. I'd say about 72 to 96 hour time frame. That's where that precise position that I gave you is the crunch position, as I'd call it, to determine whether where the system will go and how strong it will be. And etc. So we got a good few good days to watch as that plays out. And then, of course, we go on to the models for Tropical Storm Julia. Now, finally, the models finally behave itself, which took them long enough. But now that this storm is offshore, most of the models do indicate system just moving slowly offshore and then coming back in towards land. Some indicating that it would continue to move slowly off towards northeast and then start to speed up and get caught up along the trough that's expected to come through. The thing is whether or not the trough will be strong enough to yank it out, or whether the trough leaves the system and the high behind it builds back, thus pushing it inland. The consensus is that it would push back inland, back in towards land after it spends a couple of days offshore. So we'll see how it goes. As seen here, I mean, it could really be anywhere in about 3 to 5 days. It could be out here off of Florida. It could be out by the Carolinas and off the Virginias. We got a good few days to go. But either way, rainy, stormy impacts across parts of Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina for the next couple of days. Definitely going to be a huge risk of flooding, and especially if the system intensifies quite a bit. You got the risk of rip currents and storm surge threats along the coast. And if it doesn't indeed make its way back onto land, you'd also have to be dealing with more of the wind threat and the tornado threat and all the other stuff. Currently, as far as I'm aware, there isn't any warnings, which there was. There isn't now. Let me double check, but I do think it's a bit of a bad call that there isn't any. There should be. There might be.
BAMM BAM model is a bit interesting there. Reminds me just a little bit of Beryl, perhaps.
Yes. It's quite interesting with the system. From when I saw it over Florida, I was thinking a little bit of if you remember Hurricane Ivan of 2004. Not so much of being crazy monster through the Caribbean hitting the Gulf, but rather when it did get off the East Coast, it did kind of loop back into Florida.
And
it is quite possible that it could end up taking the BAM or even the TAB D.
That BAMD model, that's like Kyle in reverse there.
in a way, yes, it is. So, it's something that we'll definitely have to watch, especially for those anywhere from Florida up to the Carolinas.
But I have to say, that's a typical stalled storm model run there.
Pretty much, yeah.
But, it's difficult to tell, but you would say that the model's just about side with eastward movement.
Well, I'd say that it's close to 50-50 with the models. I wouldn't really say 50-50. I'd say more like 40-60, with the 40 being on the eastward shot, while 60 takes it meandering off the coast and then throws it back in towards land.
That must be deceiving to my eyes then.
Yeah, it's really a tangled web with all the models here, really. So it's a little bit hard to distinguish between them. But yeah, if you were to use the models on like Google Earth or Google Maps, and you could be able to zoom in and take a point on each individual model. You'd be able to get a better view of it. But But yeah, either way, it's going to be an interesting week ahead, especially for the southeast. As we could remember, the southeast, they definitely had a whale of a time when Hermine came passing through and causing problems for all of these areas here. And it's going to be another little trip of an adventure for these guys off here. What I do want to mention with Julia is that it indeed formed overland, although the ATCF files suggest that it formed actually closer towards the coast down here. But either way, system formed overland, and that makes up. It's not unheard of. It has happened before, storms forming over land, and it's only about 2% of all the Atlantic tropical cyclones that have formed and recorded, I think, since 1870 something. That it's only 2% of all those storms that have actually formed over land. Which 2% doesn't sound like a big number, and over the whole general thing of it, it's not a whole lot of numbers, but it is a good few storms that have indeed formed over land. Obviously, moved most of them moved off of land and back into open water.
I reckon it would happen more commonly in the West Pacific because of all those little islands.
Mm. Well, I think the main reason for this is because of an effect called the brown ocean effect or brown sea effect, and it's basically where you have a landmass that has had a lot of rain, and it's definitely flooded out, or the ground is absolutely soaking wet.
I
And
guess the Everglades is always a brown ocean then.
in a way, kind of yes, but mind you, the Everglades are further south and only take up only a portion of Florida. But taking into account of the event of the non-tropical tropical depression that had formed off of Florida and moved across the coastline and across Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and into Texas. And then Hermine, obviously, being another one, causing very, very wet conditions across here. And because of that, the storm thinks that it's over an ocean, and thus, starts to organize and develop. I mean, it has happened before. We've seen it with several storms. One system which is very relative to this system would be May of 2008 when it moved across Florida, and it actually intensified a little bit while it was over land, and then came across and moved over and was able to survive the trek over Florida. And it was over a similar case. Florida had some rain then, and it really caused that really brown ocean effect. And of course, with the storm feeling that it's thinking that it's over sea and it's over land, hence brown sea effect or brown ocean effect. So that's how that happens.
Could I just cut in and ask Adam this question? Considering what Judy was doing and your reference to her min, do you reckon that's put the foundation in by the amount of rainfall, and you referred to the ground's absolutely saturated? So do you reckon the environment was put in place by her min? And another question, picking up on what Alan said to us privately, what are those high pressure systems doing? We saw that there were 3 high pressure systems, stationary or near stationary along the east coast of the United States, and what's happened to those 3 highs?
Um, okay. Well, to answer the last question you just asked me, um, well, the whole entire setup here is that there's a high out to the west of the system. I mean, to the east of the system. Sorry, and then there's also a frontal system or a trough coming in across here, as well as another high behind the system. And what's kind of helping to drag the system a bit offshore and a bit to the east is this trough. Now the question is, okay, what's going to happen? Is it going to pull out with the trough, or is it going to stay? Now, according to the models and according to the forecast track, what's going to happen? That trough is going to lift out. The storm is going to remain. So what happens next? The high comes in, and you got to remember the highs in the northern hemisphere go in the clockwise motion, right? So what's going to end up happening? That high pulls off to the east. This system gets trapped underneath that high, and then gets shot back to the west. So that's what we're looking at in terms of that. In terms of the actual charts itself, let me go ahead and take a look at that myself. Give you the exact stuff. I can't really bring it up on the screen share at the moment because the computer's being a little slow. Technical difficulties. um, but okay, on the latest charts, obviously, we got as I stated, the two surface highs here and here. And then obviously you got that frontal system, and you got two highs, one across Canada and one across, if I can remember the name of that state, Chicago, I think it is. And then what those two highs are expected to move south and eastwards. The front is expected to break off, move northeastwards quite quickly, and the highs around here pretty much hangs around. The highs coming across the east coast move in, and there you go. You know, you got that blocking pattern taking in there. Now, you know, it's kind of a little game here we're playing, because you know you gotta see how quickly the system does end up pulling out to the northeast. Does it get pulled with the system? Does it get trapped by the high? We have to wait and see how it plays out. You know, it's just this game that we have to play. And you know, the interesting thing too is that with the highs building in here, this will also be another interesting little thing to how later down the line we're going to be seeing a similar setup for TD12, and that's what we got to watch out for to help determine whether it's TD12 was going to end up Caribbean, up the East Coast, or out in the Atlantic. And it's a similar kind of setup with that. And for that other question, David, that you asked about Hermine, and if she actually set up the conditions for Julia, if I'm understanding that right.
Yep.
Yeah. Basically, the storm came in, had caused a lot of rainfall, especially for Florida, parts of eastern Georgia, off the coastal Carolinas, and it pretty much set itself up for Julia.
Adam, would you like me to? You got any other links you want to show? If not, I'll bring up the. Okay, well, I'll bring up the screen share, and we go across to the what's it? Forecast cone for Tropical Storm Junior. So here we. And acknowledging the comments in the chat room too. Adam, while we're waiting for the screen share to come up, good morning to Lachlan, who's over here on the east coast of Australia. And the Redstone Gaming, as I said, we've noted your comments. Lachlan, Adam, Lachlan's posted a reference to a trough to move the highs out, then get them moving for Julia.
For Julia, right. So as I said, it's a game. It's a game for the highs here, right? The highs that are east of the system, they're pretty much going to remain there. The highs behind the front is going to follow behind the front. When the front moves out, the high moves in, replacing the front. You know, it's like if you think about it as mountains and valleys, you have you have the valleys, which is the trough, moving in, and then it moves northeastwards, right? And then you need to fill that space in. So what ends up filling that space is that mountain. And what happens is that the low pressure system, which is the storm, it'll always have to travel around the mountain. It can't travel through the mountain unless the mountain is a very weak mountain, and the low itself is a very, very, very strong system. Not that doesn't really happen too often. Only with really strong hurricanes that sometimes you get them plowing through the middle of a high pressure system. So that's the game. That's the game with the high pressures and the trough and Julia.
And welcome to Project Division. And the comment refers to tropical depression 12 expected to dissipate rapidly, according to the HWRF. Now, Adam, are you able to bring up that model?
Right.
I saw the model. And
yep.
You got the model? Okay.
I saw the model. I believe it was calling not so long ago for a weak tropical storm peak, and for it to die away after about 2 days.
Yeah.
I think models are split on whether it regenerates beyond that, but a lot of the models, as we saw earlier, seem to be set on an initial peak, and then who knows for the next part.
It's really a wait-and-see game. But I do have to mention to people that do not focus on one particular model. Never focus on a particular model. Use the models together as a group, as a guidance, and don't use each individual model as a specific forecast that's exactly what's going to happen. Because the fact is that models change, and with different models, different inputs are put into those models, and they come out with various things. So, you know, I suggest don't focus on a particular model. What we do as forecasters, as hurricane specialists, what we do is that we take the group of models, as I showed you earlier, the spaghetti plots of the models. What we do is that we look for where all of those models converge. Where's the agreement with all the models, and that's where we usually make our forecast. As I showed you earlier with the models for Julia, you notice how it's kind of spider webbed and kind of moved off to the east, and then came back to the west and made and was heading back towards land. Now you can see here, which is the forecast graphic. The forecast cone is leaning more towards that it would come out and then head back in towards land. And that's because that's where most of the models are in agreement with. Now, you don't see it throwing it out to the northeast or to the east, and nor do you really see it following the BAM-M and coming down into Florida either. But the cone is wide enough to cover all bases. But the general consensus, and that's what we look for, general consensus within the models, and we make our forecast by looking at that.
And for my own personal position over here on the east coast of Australia, one thing that I've undertaken as a practice is to get consensus. I always apply caution to the models, but when there's agreement amongst the those models that I monitor, then the picture becomes clear. But
well, good luck getting a consensus with Julia.
yes.
Well,
What about precipitation?
Well, with precipitation now, I mean, it is expected to be with Julia a big rain event more than anything else. I'll tell you exactly what they have for it. Yeah, give me 2 secs. So with rainfall, total rainfall accumulations 2 to 4. With local amounts of 6 along immediate coastlines of South Carolina and southeast North Carolina through Friday. And those rainfall could lead to flooding and flash flooding. I do also have to say that, if this, and this is for the short term, this is for as it is now and for the next, 2 to 3 days. If the system does intensify more than before and ends up developing the convective activity and so on, we could end up seeing more rainfall. So we got to look out for that, especially with the areas already saturated with the rainfall that's already fall for Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina with Hermine. That's gonna be another big issue, especially for those low-lying areas. We're definitely worried about that.
And just noticing the comments in the chat, and for our viewers and those that will view the video, picking up on what Nathan said, add Phil13 on Skype to have a chat about pairing on future live events, and
or just to have a chat in general.
That's true, and to engage with us in the fans chat room. You can send a request through to Nathan or via the Phil13, or you can visit our main website, click on the Skype icon, and that's another way that you can join the activity.
All about making it easy to do things, and it is on the website.
Yes.
Yep.
Well, that's when it's up to date. At the moment, it doesn't appear to be up to date. That's not my department.
No, that's over. Jason over there on the west coast of Australia.
I don't think it's necessarily Jason's fault either. It's a technical glitch that's occurring. But obviously, the videos are always up to date, and that's why we always have either one or the other definitely working. But we aim to have everything working whenever we can help it.
But we can't prevent the technical hiccups like Adam's had with his internet connection down there. But listen, for our viewers, Adam isn't in first gear. He is very passionate when it comes to the weather, like other members in the team. But he loves the question and answer. He likes the questions to be raised, and he loves to answer. But getting back to a previous discussion, looking at Julia, I know we've got other systems. Alan was telling us in a private conversation that these high pressure systems on the East Coast, I'm going back about 4 days, it's also impacting on the Canadian weather scene.
Well, the thing you got to understand is that, even though we focus on these specific individual systems, you could have an idea of where the system will go, what it will do based on the whole entire synoptic pattern of the whole entire basin. You could, because everything falls into place, right? Highs fall into places where lows used to be. Lows fall into places where highs used to be. You have these troughing patterns. You have pressures that are lowering in areas, pressures rising in areas, and it all falls into place like a jigsaw puzzle. So, with conditions in Canada, conditions in the United States, conditions in Africa, in Europe, out in the Northern Atlantic, out in the extremes, southern North Atlantic, they all interact and entwine with each other to give you an idea of what things will do, right? And it's pretty simple. We know that low pressure systems in the northern areas, they tend to pull from east to west. High pressures usually follow behind it, and we usually know it's really split between a trough or a front. We know low pressure systems or waves tend to come off of Africa and they get pushed westwards by the Atlantic highs. Now, the question is that okay? Which is stronger, the Azores high or the Bermuda high? Are both of them bridged? Are both of them connected? How strong are they? Is there a front off the east coast of the United States or Canada? Is there a depression heading off towards Europe and the UK? It all falls into place. So,
at this point, sorry.
Yeah, I'm just saying quickly. Just what I do is that I take the whole entire synoptic charts, the surface charts. I look at the whole thing, and then I do that, and then I get a better idea of where things are going from there.
All right. I just want to remind people of what particular warnings are in effect. Obviously, no tropical storm warnings, though. Having said that, it's as close as you can get to tropical storm warnings, because anywhere around Charleston, all the way to the whole of Georgia, I believe, or at least half of it, if you venture anywhere out to sea, it's a tropical storm warning, but on land areas it isn't. Regardless of that, there is a flash flood watch in effect for many areas: southeast South Carolina, including the following areas: Beaufort, Charleston, coastal Colleton, inland Berkeley, and tidal Berkeley, and possibly some other locations as well, but obviously flash flood watch is for large areas, and also the risk of rip currents too.
I would also say that I'm pretty sure likely they'll possibly reissue warnings for these areas, especially for southern South Carolina. I'd expect as the system kind of pulls off to the northeast a little bit, then to the east, I'd expect some tropical storm coastal warnings to be issued there. But especially as the system ends up turning around and heading back towards the coast, I expect the tropical storm warnings on the coastal areas and the inland areas to be in full swing as that does happen. So we'll have to wait and see on how that plays out. But either way, as he said, do not be messing out on the open water. Stay offshore. Unless it's absolutely necessary, like you're within shipping lanes and so on.
And I'm just looking at radar imagery right now, and there's significant rainfall along the central to eastern coast of South Carolina at this point. I have to say, the Georgia coast and southern South Carolina, there's hardly anything on the radar. I'm not sure if that's the storm's composition or whether there's a hole in the coverage there.
Hold on, let me go and take a look at that.
It might be legit actually looking at the satellite imagery. It seems to be a bit of a gap there.
And while you're
Yeah.
looking at that, evening to Lee up there in Scotland. Is there
Yes.
somewhere? Lee? Oh, he'll be back soon. And while Adam is looking up that information, welcome to Jerry and others in the chat room, and it's good to see you here.
Yeah, and I just want to pop the question here because we didn't really prepare for when we would be, how long we'd be running for. We're coming up to the end of the first hour. How long are we in? How long would you guys like to stay?
We'll just run through the forecast cones for those systems and just talk a little bit about that, and then I guess I'll be it for now until
Okay.
a little later on tonight.
I'm just looking at the viewer stats too. They're actually increasing, Nathan.
Yes,
So,
but we don't talk about that when we're live, David.
well, that'll be a blooper, but that's just an observation. But as I said, it's good to see the communication from the viewers.
I certainly appreciate it, no doubt about that.
And something that did slip my mind, but it's come back. You can always monitor the Force 13 website. We operate a Twitter account, and that
Facebook and
is
Twitter.
yes, and that is providing constant, regular. What is the word you like to give? Coverage of what's taking place.
I guess so.
And down here, read the Australian severe weather systems that impact on 4 states, actually 5 states.
And I anticipate that there will be some more live action occurring, not just about storms, but covering some other things as well, some discussion throughout the team, and some game shows and other things that we'll be showing at the end of the week into the weekend, which we hope you'll enjoy also, because we're planned to be running more live events in the future very soon.
And also guess the storm or super cyclone challenge.
People love Guess the Storm. We've not done one in so long, but maybe
that's
we will.
Right. And
I know
Nathan, which you haven't made public yet.
Sorry?
The video that you're in the game
The Super
show,
Cyclone Challenge, yes.
the
We've got,
Super
I believe we've got 5 unaired episodes that we are going to be airing between now and October. So look forward to that and look out for it on the.
And I know that you guys absolutely want to drag me into it. So I'm gonna be wary for that. I know you're gonna drag me in sometime.
Everyone who wants to go will have the opportunity as long as they're able to.
Yeah. It's all good. So looking on satellite and radar, most of the activity is off to its north, northeast, east, and also to the southwest over Florida. Activity starting to pick up there.
Ooh.
All right, so the next bit here that we'll.
I just want to mention the NHC forecast for TD12 is interesting, how they say it'll be a storm, then depression, and a storm again. I'd have thought they'd have gone more with a constant tropical storm, but they say...
Well, it's pretty... looking at the intensity guidance for that, there is a bit more of an agreement that it would weaken down and then re-intensify. So we'll see how it plays out. But yes, so here is the forecast cone for TD12, and as I'd like to point out, this system could be anywhere within the cone within 5 days, and that's why the 5-day period is the biggest and fattest part of the cone. Which, as I said, it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening with the system. If it's further south, closer to the 15-degree line, it'll be more of a Caribbean threat. If it's more closer towards about 17, 18, 19 north, then it'll likely miss out on the Caribbean, passing north of Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, possibly going up to the Bahamas and up the east coast. And then, of course, if it ends up north of 20 degrees, it'll likely pull itself out to sea, maybe being a Bermuda threat. But if it does end up pulling out to sea, it would likely do so earlier and end up missing Bermuda altogether.
This year so far would favour it, but if it stays weaker, then it's going to move further west.
Yep. Basically, how you'd look at it is weaker systems further west, stronger systems further north, basically. So you can keep that in mind.
Just cutting in, Redstone Gaming, you can get in contact with Phil on the Skype, and he could...
I'll talk through it now, Phil, David, because we're wrapping up the show, I believe. Just any parting comments not related to that? Either of you'd like to bring up?
Just...
Okay, well...
what's the next one? Ian?
Yeah, Ian, moving up towards the
okay,
north.
so,
right, just quickly.
so let's quickly show off Ian. As I said, Cone shows it becoming extratropical soon, but we'll have to wait and see how it plays out. Either way, staying away from the east coast, staying away from Atlantic Canada, heading towards Iceland and possibly the UK. You'll have to wait and see how that plays out.
Well, I doubt it'll be my part of the UK, but we'll be looking out for the whole Atlantic and beyond. Of course, we've still got those storms elsewhere. Malakas, which is a Category 1 typhoon last time I checked, and intensifying, could be our next Cat 4, and HWRF still says a landfall for Japan at that intensity, remarkably. Also, what's his name? Moranti has just made landfall, well, a few hours ago now, in China. It's weakening, but still a typhoon, a remarkable peak intensity that it achieved not so long ago. And we've also got a few invests out in the Pacific as well, and of course Hurricane Orlene, which is still going.
Yeah, should be weakening, well, expected to weaken by the next advisory. It is a borderline hurricane, so it should be going out the door soon. And obviously, as David is showing here, Moranti moving further inland, and I gotta admit, it is looking pretty impressive for an inland typhoon now.
Showing Julia how it's done.
Yes, exactly. And of course, besides that, we have the system in the Gulf of Mexico. Which is former 92L. Maybe they might redesignate it 92L once again. Pesky little system that was, as it formed off of Africa, came out into the Atlantic, and then and weakened, and they stopped tracking it. Then they brought it back up again before it ended up in the Caribbean, and then it weakened, and then they stopped tracking it until it got into the Bahamas.
We'll keep watching it.
Either way, it's expected to head into Texas, likely a rainfall event. If it does develop, likely it will maybe tropical depression, maybe weak tropical storm, but don't really expect too much in terms of development while it's in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. If anything, closer to the coast. And then there's also another system that's expected to come off of Africa, expected to be further north than TD 12 and end up moving west-northwest and out to sea. Likely not to be much of an issue except for the Cabo Verde Islands.
And we'll talk
But
about
other than
that more
that-
in the future. We gotta go, I'm afraid. That's all
Yep.
for now. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back again soon. Stay up to date, Force13 on Facebook and Twitter, Fool13 on Skype, FOOL13. That's all for now. Goodbye.
Bye.